when I started in planning, quite a long time ago now, it was very much about, it was very dry actually. It was a lot of number crunching and data analysis, and I think you were kept very much at arm's length from the creative department unless you had particular good relationships in whatever creative department or whatever agency you were in. And I think over time what I've seen with planning is a whole new breed of us getting closer to the creative product. So for me, we are the catalyst. We create the space, the brand space, that the creatives then go and play in. And I think over the last, particularly in the last 20 years, I think we've almost become the right arm of the creative department, whereas before I think account management was almost in the middle of us and the creatives. I think now we're two sides of the creative product. I think to be a good planner you have to have a strong right and a strong left brain, and you may favour your creative side, and I think increasingly planners do favour the creative side, but I think you still have to have that kind of deep analysis. And someone summed it up yesterday in a fellowship interview, a WPP fellowship interview, which was it is about creating order out of chaos. And that reminds me of great planners like Gary Duckworth in the 1990s, who said that, you know, a planner's role is effectively, if you think strategy and the ways that we can go with strategy are like a pile of iron filings that have been dumped on a tabletop, and effectively the planner is the magnet that pulls all the iron filings in one direction. And I think we are the people that synthesise the possibilities and the opportunities a brand might have for the creative department. And I think, you know, just being close to the creative product in the way we are is a phenomenal sort of place to be. I think planners love creative freedom and they love independence of thought. I absolutely adore working on new business pitches because I can look at brands and be as pure as I like in terms of my recommendation. As long as you still have to go through, you know, you have to go through your A to Z, and you have to come out in a sort of wonderfully fertile creative spot. None of that changes. But I think the great thing about pitches is you're not being tied down. There isn't that kind of, you're in it to win it, and you'll do anything to win it, but you're not having criticisms, I guess, thrown at you, or you know how long things take to develop. You know, briefs go back and forward and ticked off and signed off, and clients will come back and make you change things in the normal day of work. But I think, you know, that you want to be where you can think very purely, and I think the day-to-day can sometimes not move as quickly or as idealistically as a lot of bright young creative brains want it to. So I think sometimes it can feel like your creativity is being hemmed in and that you can't get your own way in terms of your thought processes. But generally speaking, you know, being challenged is a good thing. But yeah, sometimes having your creative wings clipped a little bit can be frustrating. No. I've got a very junky brain. I did all my lessons well, and I'm definitely, I've always wanted to be a parent pleaser throughout my life, but I did watch a hell of a lot of TV, and I would hope I'm quite a culturally colourful person, and I'm a people watcher, and brands fascinate me. I love films, I love books, and I think throughout my life I've just taken on quite a lot of good junk on board, and I think that's been quite useful in this job. And I think the job has taught me the rigour, but did I know I wanted to be a planner? I had no idea this kind of job existed. And what I've found since I got into this job, I remember all the graduate articles about being a planner in advertising were all about, you had to know about numbers and have maybe a statistical brain and things like that. I mean, God, that's how it was in the early 90s. It was awful on the milk round, which was really off-putting, which is why I actually became an account man to begin with, because I thought planning sounded awful. But then suddenly I realised when I switched into planning after about 6 months that it was the job that I was made for. All that junk, all that TV, all that Blue Peter, all that comic reading was going to be put to good use. So it's always been the natural job for me, but did I know it existed? I think you guys are very, very lucky. I think there's such a strong youth, sort of young planner culture now, that it's something you want to aspire to and to get into, but it wasn't like that when I first started. I think we're just coming out of quite a difficult time for recruitment generally for young planners. So I think certainly what I'm finding trying to take on people at say the 4, 5, 6 year level now is that it's quite tough, because I think the recession meant that people cut back on account management, planning, you name it. So I think what's happening now is that the industry is waking up again. I think there's some really strong fellowship programs. Ogilvy has an amazing fellowship program, WPP does. That means the Grays, the Rainy Kellys, the JWTs of this world will have really strong pipelines as well. And there's a real interest in young planning at the moment, not least because I guess us older bunch, the old Gen X, think Gen Y is much more digitally savvy maybe than we are typically. That said, I think it's still quite tough to get into. I think, you know, we're still looking for spirited, big conceptual thinkers who are able to order their thinking in a compelling way and sell their thinking in a compelling way. So what I noticed with our own fellowship is the competition is as tough as it's ever been. There's probably more people applying now. So there was probably no planners applying when I first got into the industry, but you probably became a suit before you became a planner. But now I think the competition is rife. But I don't think the criteria for becoming a great planner has necessarily changed. I think there's more people out there. Bright, compelling, creative minds, people with an eclectic background. I mean, all too often if you look at, and you know, we've all looked at a lot of application forms in our time, that, you know, when you see the general, oh God, in my time it would have been the equivalent of knowing how to do desktop publishing, because that was the thing, that in having a clean driving license, the sort of things that you needed on your CV to make out that you were an honest person in those days. That kind of stuff doesn't interest me. I mean, nearly everybody seems to have A stars now and A's. I'm actually more interested in what was your absolutely favourite subject at school and why. Why did it float your boat, for example? Looking for interesting experience. It doesn't have to be experience within the industry. You know, you could have gone off and worked at the Royal Academy for a summer, and that would interest me. I love eclectic brains, people that can pick up random pieces of pop culture and expand on it. One guy that I interviewed for the WPP Fellowship yesterday, he'd done Russian somewhere amazing, and he talked about a Russian post-Bolshevik uprising book from about 1920, which talked about creating order out of chaos, called Fatal Eggs. And he had me absolutely flipping gripped, because, you know, he was equating a piece of literature to a way that we can do communications well. And you know, as I've said just before in this interview, you know, creating order out of chaos and potential creative chaos is what a planner's main role is. I'm a really strong advocate of people getting experience before they come into planning. But you know what? I just don't think for me it's not a mandatory. The reality is an actual internship or a placement before you actually go for a grad scheme or apply for a grad position. It's pretty basic stuff. I mean, you get a feel for the agency, you come in, you might do a competitive review or a mind map about a certain market. and I don't know, do a little bit of social listening or something. But I don't think, for me personally, it's not the thing that would necessarily swing somebody in my favour. I would recommend that people work really hard to look at different grad schemes. It's quite interesting, I've noticed before now, where someone will come through to the shortlisting for a particular grad scheme, and I've done it at a few places now, but won't necessarily have applied to other agencies. So, you know, I'm not quite sure why those people are, you know, why are you just applying to one ad agency? You've got to apply to everyone. And you can sniff and you can tell the people that are absolutely dogged and passionate about getting in. I think for the new generation of young planners coming through, starting somewhere slightly different and wanting to make a change suggests an eclectic brain, a curious brain, and a potentially interesting brain, because planners aren't just one thing anymore. We have to think about comms, we have to think about upstream planning, we have to think about research, we have to think about thought leadership. It's a much bigger job than it used to be. Okay. I have before now noticed new people who just sit and wait to be told what to do. I think it's tough, and I think even if it's against your better nature, you have to be out there doing stuff, looking for work. Almost, I mean, I remember how I used to feel, almost forcing yourself to go and chat to people and get yourself known and go and meet all the creatives. You cannot sit and not reach out to people. This is a people business at the end of the day, and it's very heavily built on relationships. Obviously, we're a client service as well, but generally people come to work because they love the sociability of it as much as anything, I think, in advertising. So I think looking industrious, being industrious, surprise and delight, horrible kind of marketing terminology, but if I think of the moments that I felt I ever cut through as a young planner, it's when I did something industrious off my own bat. And you know, like, I remember doing a mind map of American teenage culture once, because I knew there was a pitch for Levi's chinos or something, and I took my little hand-drawn mind map, and before I knew it, I was presenting it to the MD. You know, do surprising little things. If you haven't got enough to do, don't just sit there and put your headphones on and pretend nothing happened. Always look interested, always go the next mile. Always present things in slightly interesting ways. I think, you know, more senior people are looking to be stimulated. They're looking for new thinking, new ways to be inspired. So you are the fodder, you are the oxygen, you are the little fire starters that we need from day to day. So the worst thing a baby can do is recess and hide and become a wallflower. Never think, if I've got one observation about the kind of millennial spirit, it is, and we've done a lot of work with Coca-Cola and Pizza Hut this year, so I know that there is a strong streak of entitlement, and give me my respect, and I will be triumphant, in the words of Beats. And I think I came from a very different sort of start point, which was kind of post-Thatcher, John Major recession, and it was all a bit stark when I started, and you felt you had to be very lucky to have got a job even. But don't expect entitlement, don't expect us to be blowing praise and seniority up your bottoms too quickly. You never stop learning as a planner. I have never stopped learning, and it's the thing that has kept me in this job, and it's the thing that keeps me coming back. You know, I went away from my second maternity, and in that time, suddenly comms planning was on the cards. Suddenly, you know, it was the time of Let's Colour on Dulux, and you know, the big thing then was creating big social movements and things like that. And I'm like, Christ, I've only been away 9 months. What happened? You know, the world was totally analogue before I went away. And there's always new things to learn, and you should always, you must keep pushing. So what advice would I give my younger self? To be confident. I think throughout my career, I don't know if it's a girly thing, I'm quite self-effacing, haven't always believed in myself and my abilities. It's a little bit of a shock that I'm still here, I guess, sometimes to me, and that I've actually got department and I do big stuff now. And I think I sometimes sort of wonder if I hadn't been so unsure of myself, what might I have achieved? Because I remember certainly in my first sort of 5-6 years in the industry, really nervous about how good I was and whether or not I had it, and I think that can really hold you back. So I'd say believe in yourself would be my note to younger self. Be bold.